Yoshie Shiratori is Japan's own Harry Houdini, and not even copper walls or a dislocated shoulder could stop his daring escapes. Modern prisons are indicative of the eras that created him. In Japan, the Meiji era, which spanned from 1868 to 1912, was considered one of the harsher periods for prisoners, so escaping prison was actually more common. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we will talk about how Yoshie Shiratori escaped 4 times in the prison cell. And what are the plan and tactics that he created. But before we continue, please help me to reach my first 500 subscribers before the end of September, or maybe my first 1,000 subscribers. I will very thankful if you do that. And also maybe you can buy me a coffee. So without further ado, let's get started. In 1881, a record number of convicts, 1821 to be precise, were able to make successful getaways from incarceration. The reason for the more frequent escapes was due to extremely harsh prison conditions, which could be said of many prisons around the world, even today. But how Shiratori turned his life into a prison cell? Well, Shiratori turned to gambling and stealing to raise funds and quickly became addicted. On April 3, 1933, he was part of a group of thieves that robbed a merchandise dealer's storehouse in Higashitsugaru. The adopted son of the owner was then stabbed to death after chasing 2 of the perpetrators out of the building. Shiratori reportedly handed himself in 2 years later, when one of his acquaintances was arrested. Though he denied the murder charge, the police allegedly beat and tortured him to get him to confess. Aomori and Akita. Transferred to Aomori prison, Shiratori often complained about the abhorrent conditions and the inhuman way he was treated by the guards. They responded to his complaints by punishing him even more. As the abuse continued, he studied their movements. In the morning there was always a 15-minute gap in the patrol time. This was his short window of opportunity to get out of there. He decided to make his move in June 1936. Using a metal wire that had been wrapped around a bucket used for bathing, he picked his cell lock and escaped through a cracked skylight. Passing guards assumed he was still sleeping as he'd placed floorboards inside his futon. While Shiratori was highly skilled at escaping, he wasn't so proficient at evading capture. Caught stealing supplies from a hospital, he was re-arrested just 3 days after the jailbreak. Handed a life sentence, he was eventually transferred to Akita prison. Here he was treated even worse than before and started plotting his second escape. It wouldn't be easy, though, as he was handcuffed at all times and placed in a cell specially designed to deter escape artists with high ceilings and a small skylight. Taking up the challenge, Shiratori regularly got out of his handcuffs and scaled the smooth copper wall to pry away at the rotting wooden framing of the skylight. He then waited for a stormy night to go out of the window so his footsteps wouldn't be heard on the roof. Abashiri and Sapporo. This time, it was 3 months before Shiratori was back inside. He made the mistake of visiting the house of guard Kobayashi, the one officer who'd been nice to him in the slammer, to ask for help in a case against injustice in the Japanese prison system. Kobayashi, though, called the police and Shiratori was sent to Hokkaido's notorious Abashiri prison, a place no inmate had ever escaped from. Exposed to the extreme cold while being forced to wear summer garments, he was placed in specially made hand and leg cuffs. Every morning he spat miso soup on the cuffs and the frames of the narrow food slot on his cell door. The salt content oxidized the screws, leading to corrosion. Shiratori saw his chance to escape during the wartime blackout on August 26, 1944. Remarkably, he dislocated his shoulders to squeeze out of the tiny food slot. Following the most audacious of prison breaks, Shiratori headed to the snowy mountains, staying in an abandoned mine. After 2 years living off nuts, berries and wildlife, he headed to a nearby village and learned of Japan's surrender. He then stole some tomatoes, which led to an altercation with a farmer, who he ended up killing. Shiratori claimed it was self-defense, but was this time sentenced to death. At Sapporo prison, he had 6 guards surveilling him. With very high walls and windows smaller than his face, they didn't feel the need for handcuffs. However, as they focused too much on potential ceiling escapes, they forgot about the floor. Shiratori also tricked them by regularly looking up. As they slept, he used miso soup bowls to dig a tunnel, keeping the dirt in a small pocket under the floorboards. Unbelievably, he'd done it again. Shiratori was free for around a year when he was offered a cigarette by a police officer in a park. As this was seen as a luxury item in Japan, he was moved by the gesture. It was at that point that he decided to confess to being an escaped convict and was rearrested. The Sapporo High Court, though, revoked his death sentence, ruling the killing of the farmer as self-defense. Shiratori was sentenced to 20 years and served 14 due to good behavior. Treated fairly, there was no desire to escape. His request to be imprisoned in Tokyo's Fuchu prison was also granted. After being paroled in 1961, he did a variety of jobs and was reunited with his daughter. The ex-convict saw out his final days in Aomori before dying of a heart attack on this day in 1979. He was 71. Shiratori, who proved that there is no difficult prison for the person who wants to escape. I hope you like this video, and also don't forget to subscribe. May God bless all of you, have a great day, and see you in the next video.